Ryan, welcome to the show.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here on short notice and without much of an agenda, to be honest with you. But here's the thing. What caught my attention is the incredible month that you just had as a market leader at Movement Mortgage. Before we get into that, how long have you been in this business now?
Around 15 years.
15 years, yeah. Right? Okay, got it. So let's just unpack it. Is this your biggest month ever?
It is, and I love that we don't have an agenda because now we have no confinements. We can just go anywhere we want.
We're going anywhere. This is Open Mic Friday.
Exactly, I love it. We can go anywhere. Yes, this is by far the biggest month that we've had. Before that, I kind of tell the story in the video that it was weird, man. I was nervous to have that video. I don't know if you saw it online. It was basically just me at home with some bourbon, and I do video every day, and I got super nervous about that one. I don't know why, but
you said you drink bourbon every day?
Yeah. Is that your takeaway? I try to, but I tell the story in that video where, we rallied as a group and we were trying to hit 30 million and we collapsed across the finish line when we did that. And we had to pull some rabbits out of the hat to make that happen the last day. And then talking with my coach, Bill Hart, he said, "Hey, what's next?" And, for some reason I skipped the $40 million mark and I just said 50 and I kind of threw it out there before I could take it back. And I was like, oh crap, he's going to hold me accountable to that. And quite honestly, wasn't quite sure if we were ever going to hit that because for me, I don't have the biggest team in the world and that's not the most volume in the world. But it's a big number to us. 52 million with a small, efficient group was by far our biggest record. And now I got to figure out what's next, right?
All right. Now, so let's unpack this a little bit because this is, I think, where the nuggets are going to be is 52 million. First of all, that's a hell of a number. That's amazing. Congratulations. Let's talk about your team. What's the structure and the makeup of that? And just to clarify your role as a market leader, right? What does that really mean? And then give me your team.
So it's a market leader at Movement's like an area manager. I have a small area, which is South Washington kind of. And we don't have big mega branches. We don't have a ton of originators. We have a really small team. So my area encompasses my main office in Puyallup. People have never heard of it, small town. And then Tacoma, people know that. And we have satellites in Lacey's. And these are like satellites. These aren't full branches with, 5 to 10 originators. Usually there's 2 to 3 originators in each one. So Lacey, Tacoma, Gig Harbor, Port Orchard, Silverdale. Kind of a small, relatively unknown area. So that's why I'm proud of that. We're not Bellevue, we're not Seattle, we're not San Francisco, we're not LA, New York. It's just, Cowtown, Puyallup, Washington, cranking out 52 million.
How many LOs report to you?
I think right now 17, 18, maybe 19 total.
Okay. All right. 17, 19, 50 million. You've got some leaders on the team who are kind of out at the front, right?
Yeah. So our top producers last month, to put that in perspective, I think we had 2 that did 5 million a month. We had a few that did 4. We had several that did 3, and then 2 million and 1 million. So our leaders are doing about 4 to 5 million a month right now.
And I'm asking because I'm doing the math quickly in my head, because what one might think is, oh yeah, you got a couple mega players on your team that are doing 10 million, 15 million, whatever, that's not the case though.
No, it's not the case. And it's funny, there's always somebody bigger, better, stronger. So got a lot of good feedback from the personal video, but I also I was talking to peers in the same town, and a girl down the street that I have tremendous respect for, a different company, big equity, I don't mind saying it. She did 13 million by herself. And I was like, well, I felt good about our numbers until I heard your individual number of 13 million. Yeah. And then another buddy of mine did 10 and 11 million back to back. So there's always bigger, stronger players out there. I love our team. I'm super happy. We have good people. Like I said, it's not the biggest number. Hopefully we'll do 500 million this year as a group. And I do think that's a big number, but it's not the biggest. I'm proud that we have a really good, solid team. We all help each other. Like if somebody has a tough file, it's very common for us to rally in that office, and you'll see 4 or 5 originators going, ooh, try this, or try it this way, try it this way. It's not this, you're on your own type of mentality. We're all rallying together. And, we all kind of pull each other up because our group's been together for a decade, which I'm proud of too, because that's not normal for our industry, right? So I'm proud of that. We've been together for a really long time, and we didn't start there. Most of our originators, I remember thinking, and when we'd celebrate $1 million months, that was a big deal. And it's still, a big deal, but now you got some of your peers doing 2, 3, 4, and 5 million. So it's pulling up the rest of the teammates. You know what I mean? So it's kind of cool that we've organically grown together. We don't have a $10 million a month type person yet.
Right. You will.
I know that we will, though, because we're going to continue to grow together. And it's a young team. I'm the old guy now, which is weird because I used to be the young guy in the business.
At 32, you're the old guy?
Yeah. I look like I'm 52, but yeah.
All right. So here's a question. I'm going to go deep for a moment. The transition, the road, the journey, right? The last kind of big hook number you hung your hat on was 30 million. You had to be somebody to achieve that number at 30 million. And then you make this big leap to 50 million. Give me a sense of like the feelings that came up for you when you put that out there as a commitment, like your story about Bill and he was going to hold you accountable. But who did you, like looking back, who did you have to become to go from 30 to 50 million? Like what changes do you think you had to go through as a leader, as a person, right? To get there? Yeah,
that's a good question. It's a loaded question too, because one would easily say the traditional method is just adding more players, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we simply got there because we hired 10 more originators. That's actually not the case.
Right.
We didn't add originators between 30 and 50. We stayed, again, really, really small and efficient.
Mm-hmm.
And so how we got there was really to your point, kind of going deep with the originators, like, hey man, how can I help you grow the business? And I love doing that. Like that's my individual why with originators. Like I want to roll up my sleeves, figure out how to get you from here to here type thing. And so that's how we got from 30 to 50. It's with the same exact team, which is really cool.
Right.
And individually the originators grew their business, and that made up that $20 million gap. I think that's really cool because it's easier and probably more traditional just to go hire out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm contrarian in that sense where I've always been the guy that just because I have 3 empty seats in an office, I'm not going to go hire to fill those seats.
Right.
And that's not typical for our business. I've been the guy like I want to find, I have something special, I believe. I think it works at a high level. We have great people. I'm very particular who I add to that team.
Right.
Again, I think that speaks to why we've had people for a decade or more on that team. So we had to get from 30 to 50, we had to individually grow and collectively grow together. It wasn't adding, originators to that. And so for me, it was just kind of doing what I normally love to do, which is digging in and saying, Miguel, Brian, Steven, how can I help you grow your business? Leslie, how can I help you grow your business?
All right, let's take it back a notch here. So did you go to your team and just say, hey guys, guess what we're going to do? We're going to go from 30 to 50 million.
No, actually, I didn't, even though I've never really been a big goal guy. And as you grow in your career and like executives, like goals have become a thing, right?
Right.
I've always been a guy like, hey man, I'm going to control my daily, weekly, and monthly activities. And if that equals 60 million, then that's going to be 60. If that equals 30 million, then that's going to be 30.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to control, the daily and weekly and monthly. And typically, if you really focus on that, you can blow whatever goal that you have out of the water.
Right.
Because you're controlling and you're giving, that there's an old saying, like, give me your full 90 for like soccer. Give me your best 90 minutes. That's kind of like my takeaway for work. Like, dude, I don't even need you to work weekends, but give me your best 40 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And if most of us really truly committed our best 40 or the full 90 in the analogy, you're going to blow a lot of your records out of the water. And so I don't remember saying like 50. I don't remember telling the team 50 million was the goal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if they knew that. I think when I just shared that we broke it, they were kind of surprised, like, oh, that's a big number. I didn't know we were shooting for that.
Really?
Well,
so what happened internally, though? I mean, I'm just curious, right? Because you're operating probably at a certain level or a certain mode, and people are doing certain activities. But then you've kind of got this number in your head. You're not necessarily saying putting up the whiteboard and the thermometer, and all that. Did people do things differently? Did things shift differently in your office in terms of like the culture, the vibe, the activity level, that kind of stuff?
Well, yeah, one thing I think that is a factor contributing to the 50 is, if most people may not know our story, but we just joined Movement.
Mm-hmm.
And when we joined Movement, that's a big deal, right? We brought a lot of people over. Transition's never fun. Like sometimes there's attrition, sometimes people get stressed out and there's no volume to be had for a while. Like that, we hit the ground running at Movement, and we found ourselves way, like, our efficiency increased through the roof. So, what used to take 2 people now takes 1. So our efficiency increased. And then obviously, I got to tip my hat to the refi boom. Obviously that helped. So I got to give credit there. So we had a lot more refi opportunities, but we became way more efficient at Movement with the 671 process. Our LOAs were way more efficient. Our processors were, our underwriters were. So those are a couple factors that, how did we get there? Like the X's and O's, that's the answer, not just an esoteric, answer, but the actual X's and O's is we were way more efficient. We were able to restructure some of the LOAs to where they can actually help more than just 1 LO and help 2 and 3. So those are 2 big factors. I got to give credit to Movement because typically I think those results aren't normal, during a transition to go, hey, we showed up and then start crushing records.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. I just don't think that's typical, but I was pleasantly surprised. And, being a leader through that move from Eagle to Movement, it was a stressful time. We could have a whole entire podcast on that. But at the end of the day, when you put people first, the only reward you get back is when you can look back to that scenario and you have several options. You have options individually, you have options as a team, you have options as a region. So there's several options. And if you can go back and go, I know that I made the best choice for the entire group, that's all you can do. If you can say that, then you've won. Because that's hard to say that was the best possible option out of all of the options that existed at that time. And I feel that way. I feel that way for the entire group, that was the best possible option for us at that time. And, the results show that we hit the ground running and are crushing records.
Let's do this, if you wouldn't mind. For those listening, many of them know that I'm a national sales coach with Movement and stuff. And so they've heard me occasionally mention Movement. I don't like to kind of use this as a platform or whatnot, but yeah, I know I've come across loan officers out there who have various responses or certain beliefs about the process. And you referred to what allowed you to grow wasn't necessarily hiring more bodies, but you were able to be more efficient, do more with less.
Yes.
Break that down for the specific loan officer. And I know you've had the conversations with LOs where, Movement's touting its upfront underwriting process. What does that really mean, to an individual loan officer if they are looking to grow their business? What's the real is that just a bunch of smoke and mirrors? Hey, everybody does, quote, upfront underwriting.
Right.
Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah. And, I'm glad you said that, because on our show for over a decade, we've created content. I've never mentioned the name of a company. Most people don't even know what I do. So again, I'm not trying to
daily they wonder that,
put Movement on a pedestal, but they're part of my story. They're part of our story. And it was a huge help and a huge blessing. And it's just part of the story. So that's why I'm referencing it. I'm not trying to say that they're better than anybody
plus
else.
I asked you, so.
Yeah. But that was the 671 process. Sure, people do upfront underwriting, but it was a shift for us because at Eagle, great company, tons of respect, nothing bad to say about them, lots of success. And we didn't struggle to close on time. That wasn't a struggle of ours. We weren't as efficient, but we didn't close late. But we never really did any upfront underwriting. And so a lot of that was, we would work really hard up front to structure really clean deals so that we wouldn't be going back and forth. We wanted fewer touches with the underwriters and the processors, and we'd call them one and dones and stuff like that. And so that's why we were able to, in a process that wasn't as efficient, we were able to close what we call on time every time. That was our goal. And it still is, right? And it's tough. It's crazy that just doing your job sets you apart from the rest of the industry, but it is. It's still tough to close on time, especially as volume increased out of nowhere. Every lender in America is struggling to hire ops to support that, because I think the stat was $286 billion worth of business nationwide was unaccounted for by the MBA.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So if you go back and look at the original prediction to what we're doing now, that's a gigantic gap, and we still don't have the ops nationwide. I just read an article that Wells Fargo is still trying to hire to staff up for that. So sidebar anyways, but that didn't hurt us as much. Movement's no different than anybody else. We're shorthanded in ops, but we are more efficient, so it doesn't hurt us as bad.
Mm, mm,
So for us, we switched kind of our strategy and said, oh, now we have this opportunity to submit a file and get an answer back in 6 hours, not days.
mm-hmm,
That's crazy to us.
mm-hmm.
That was weird that we had that ability to do that. And so it took a few months to get used to that. And not all of our originators do that. It doesn't mean you have to submit every file up front. Some don't, but a lot of them, especially when you're doing like a tough state bond deal, or maybe you got tough income that varies. It's nice to be able to go, instead of like, man, I hope this works, and you're running DU and LP and you're just hoping and praying it works. You don't have to hope and pray anymore. You can package that deal together, actually get it in an underwriter's hands and have them start working on that and feel really confident. I'm passionate for the consumer. So the fact that we send consumers out, we just did another podcast yesterday talking about this. And as an industry, we send consumers out on this 30, 60-day process based off of, yeah, it looks good. I think that's horrible. And in our scenario that we talked about yesterday, an originator, won't name names or brands, but they basically did that. You get the app, you're like, yeah, you're probably good to go. And they write a pre-approval letter. Yep. It wasn't a fully underwritten pre-approval. Well, long story short, it cost them $5,000. They waited 66 days, lost the house, were homeless. And it was all because, and I don't think it was ill intent by the originator, but that's kind of the standard of, yeah, you're good to go. Here's your pre-approval letter.
Right.
We got to do better. As an industry, we have to do better. I think that upfront underwriting process that we have for 671, and other lenders do it as well, is a part of that. Like, how do you set yourself apart from the fintechs? This is one of them. Like, let's give a lot of respect to that consumer, because if that were me, and I know if that were you, you wouldn't want to be going shopping, never really having financing ready for you, spending money on inspections and appraisals and earnest money you're never going to get back. Yep. But that's what we're doing, guys. So we have to do a better job collectively up front than the good old, yeah, you look good to go.
Right. Let's, for those that are curious what 671 means, you want to just real quickly summarize that?
Yeah, so it's a 6-hour underwrite. We try to process the file, and processing means different things to different lenders. So that we want to try to have basically everything processed with conditions in 7 days. And then you have like, your 1-day closings. So it's kind of cool because all of our ops leaders in Casey follow that and celebrate that. And, of course, it's not 100% that we hit that. And I'll probably butcher their stat, maybe you know it. But I think every time I check in, it's about 78% of the time we're hitting that, which I think is a really cool stat. Yeah. The point is, like, from the top down, it's the DNA of the company, which one of the reasons I was attracted to it originally. But yeah, that's kind of the 671 process. And again, this is a tough business, and closing on time for the rest of the industry is still a challenge, especially for the banks and credit unions. Yeah. And this is something Casey, to his credit, and the movement built from day one. This wasn't something they just did this year. This was day one, 10 years ago. Yeah. Yeah. So they're not trying to like add little widgets and parts to the huge mothership that's already moving forward. It's been built from the ground up to be structured this way. So I've heard other LOs kind of, iterate that point that that's why it works as well as it does at scale, is because the company was built from the ground up like that. Yeah. And we saw, I mean, you're kind of asking more details about why we were more efficient, but we saw our underwriters, almost double the production coming, again, from a good platform to movement, good to great. Yep. Good book. They're, I don't know what the stat is off the top of my head, but I could pull it, but say they're underwriting 10 files a day. They went to, it was close to double, almost 20 files. Same with processors. I had hired a processor that came from another company she wanted to process, and she wasn't a processor yet. They just wouldn't give her that opportunity. Said, hey, come on over. And we trained her. And so I'm so proud of her, because in her 3rd month as a new processor that another person wouldn't give an opportunity to, she closed 52 transactions. So to put that in perspective for us, at another good company that we came from, like crushing it was 30. And we went to 52 with like a brand new processor in 3 months. So another example of being more efficient. Yeah. I was so proud of her. That's awesome, man. Systems matter for sure. Efficiencies matter. And the other, I guess, last point on that, and we'll move on, is when you're confident in your process and you can deliver on that kind of promise, right? Of like, you had a great line, by the way. That's a great branding thing. On time, every time.
Like, I mean, if you could stand confidently in that when you're speaking to a realtor or somebody else, that's one of your value props, because a lot of people speak it, but the fact that you have stats to back it up, like you said, about 80, 79-ish, 80% of 10,000 files close within those, the 671 timeline. That's huge.
It is. We do a lot of videos. So we had another video just yesterday. We were talking exactly about that, and it's an untangible. You can't measure it, but the confidence that a loan officer gets from a great ops system behind them, closing on time every time. Again, you can't measure that, right. But I've seen originators in our team come from something that wasn't working successfully, and so they didn't have a lot of confidence. You can kind of see that, how they hold themselves, how they like talk to a realtor. They're not very, you can actually see it physically. You can see it change when they go from not having a system they're confident on to, yeah, man, we're 100% closing on time every time, if not early. That's the third part of that, my phrase. And you'll see their business grow because now they're walking around town, their chest is out, they're confident in the product that they're selling, which is themselves and their company. Right. And so you can't measure that, but I've definitely seen that in my career when an originator gets that awesome team behind them. You're going to see their volume increase. You're going to see their sales activity increase too, because you're confident in what you're selling, right?
Well, you're only as good as your whole team. You're like, let me see, what game was I watching last night? Oh, the Giants and the Patriots. To be able to hang out there in the pocket and have confidence in your team that they're going to give you, right, the ability to execute and make those plays, then you feel confident to friggin' just like make that happen. And like so weak attempt at a sports metaphor there, but.
Yeah. Yeah. The Patriots are awesome examples of that. I went from hating them because they beat us in a Super Bowl, the Hawks, to having a ton of respect for Belichick and
talk about a system, right? They can take almost anybody and put them in that system.
It's coaching, it's leadership, it's system. I mean, how many different receivers has Brady had even just this year? Yeah. And guess what? He makes a superstar out of all of them. Yeah. And then the masterful defensive strategy against the Rams last year. I mean, those guys were explosive and they made them look like a junior varsity team. That was all coaching and scheme. Yes. That's so brilliant. And so I'm still not fans, but I have a tremendous amount of respect for. There you go. Belichick.
That's healthy. That's healthy. Thank you. Appreciate that. Because I'm from New England originally. I don't know if you like me.
Yeah, I'm giving you. I just will not put on the jersey or support them.
All right, fair enough. All right, let's get back into down. Oh, by the way, guys, you heard the whole thing about movement. If you're listening and you are possibly in a position for considering a change, hey, reach out to one of us, right? You know how to hit us up. Happy to tell you what's real, the truth, right? No fluff. Okay, so you have a team of about 15 or 17 LOs, you said, if I'm correct. And you've been doing this a long time. The market is crazy busy. It's more competitive than it's ever been. We're going to get into some of the disruption in a moment, but just what do you, how do you coach your LOs? Like, what are you seeing that works repeatedly, successfully, regardless of the market?
Everybody's different. So it's really interesting. I wish I could just say like, this is exactly how I coach LOs. Some don't even want the coaching, and that's fine. And some do. And so everybody has strengths and weaknesses. My job is to figure out, the yin and yang. How can I, add some strengths to, I have originators that are great at the ops. They can put the best file together ever. And that is a strength. Yeah. But if you can't go out and meet people, then that strength is never realized. So I have to figure out how to coach that up, that sales side up, because they definitely have the strong ops side. They know guidelines like the back of their hand. They can structure a file better than, some of the best salespeople out there. And so my job is to figure out that yin and yang, like how can I compliment them? Where do they need to be complimented? We have originators that are amazing salespeople, but they struggle putting files together. So I got to figure out, a lot of my job is team building. So what type of LOA, because LOAs differ and also in how they're used differ based off brand and strategy. So is this a salesperson that really shouldn't have their hands in the file or have, be in the LOS? Most people would kind of make fun of that person. They're like, oh man, you don't know how to, put a file in the LOS. I'm like, I don't care. If that person can go out and make it rain and bring in, attract realtors and referral partners, that's of tremendous value. Right. My job is then to find a complement person that is, strong in ops, again, a yin and yang, to complement, his strength or weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I do a lot, is trying to figure out, what's the missing piece to that. If it's a salesperson, typically it's an ops type LOA, and that's a tough one. We could all talk about, LOA strategies and finding the right fit. And there's a lot of turnover there.
Yep.
And then you can talk about scaling a team, having a second and a third and a fourth LOA. And there's a lot of turnover there if you interview a lot of mega producers.
Yep.
So that is not an easy process. And if you're constantly going back and hiring people, it's not something you can scale. An originator can't scale their business if they can't. Again, back to my analogy with a strong ops team.
Yeah.
It starts with a strong, sales support, a loan officer assistant. And so everybody's different. My job is to figure out how I can help, add that missing piece.
I like that. It's kind of modular for you, if you will, right? It's like, let's play to somebody's strengths. Let's not take this rainmaker who knows how to kill it and generate business and try and force them to, right, fit into this, square peg or whatever. Let's let them sail, let them be free, go do what they do best.
I've learned that so many times in my career that people thrive, like the book Start With Why, like when you put them in a position of doing things that they're good at and they're happy, they thrive.
Yeah.
Like they don't even need a whole lot of coaching and managing at that point, because they're in the right spot, whether that's going to be an originator that I tell them, hey dude, don't even touch the computer. Most people be like, oh, that's a horrible strategy. Is it? I mean, he's going to do 50 million this year. I don't know. That's a horrible strategy. Exactly. Now, if I force that guy to go do something that he's not good at, right? Now we have a rub situation and things fall apart. Mm-hmm. So I try to, in overall 10,000 foot level strategy for everything, not just sales, LOAs, processors. Like I'm trying to figure out how to put people in places where they thrive. And if I see that they're not thriving, I'm going to try to make a tweak. And maybe that is a different type of ops. Maybe it's a different type of sales.
Yeah.
But I'm always looking at that. And once you get those people in those places, again, it's not like there's not a whole lot of micromanaging there to do, because they're happy. Mm-hmm. When people are happy, what are they doing? They're excelling in their jobs.
Right.
Again, part of our team, I don't have to ask the ops people to work overtime. Never. I don't think once in 15 years, I'm like, hey guys, I'm going to need you to work this weekend. Guess what? They just do, man, because they're bought in. Never once. And they do. They work overtime all the time because they're hustlers as well, and they're happy in their position and they're cranking.
Wow. You've done some good hiring, but plus your culture and your leadership is really what makes the difference. All right. Well, let's pivot a little bit because I want to get a little bit tactical. For those in my audience anyways who are listening, you may not know that Ryan, you and the other Ryan, RC, have been running a show for 10 years now, right?
Yep.
10 years. That's amazing.
Decade.
It's called a decade. So 10 years. So it's called the resource.tv, and you guys are just like really awesome with video and education. And first of all, a lot of funny stuff too. But your quality, I've seen your quality, like in terms of production value, has grown a lot, But what I want to ask you about is this, right? Because it's mostly LOs listening, and everybody's like tuning in for what? The nugget, like give me the thing, You had a video you posted, and we're going to put links in the show notes to your stuff. But I'm looking at one. The topic is the case for video and social.
Yeah.
But I'd be curious to ask you, because you're clearly a video guy, right? Perhaps a social guy as well, in terms of like buying into social.
Sure. Yep.
Okay. So I'm curious then, back to kind of the general coaching question, like what are you seeing LOs do to succeed? Let's just have a brief dialogue on, I don't know how to phrase it other than, does somebody have to be doing video or be in on social, do you think, to be a successful LO today?
They don't have to. I mean, I know you talk to a lot of top producers. I had an interview recently with a girl on the East Coast that's going to do like 75 million. She doesn't touch social. So I guess that's the short answer. You don't necessarily have to. I just talked to a good friend of mine, Jordan. He closed 9 million last month in Denver. He doesn't touch social. And so he flew out and hung out with me for a day. And I was just trying to say, like, hey, obviously what you're doing is not broken. Mm-hmm. I just want to say, like, what would Jordan look like if he did add the social aspect, man? Because social's huge. I mean, it's a gigantic opportunity, and it's not the end all be all. And you don't have to do it. There's certainly people winning without it. But I just wonder if you're doing 100 million or if you're doing 10 million a month and you're not touching it all, what would you do if you were leveraging the power of social? I mean, because if you asked me like, hey, 10 years ago when it was just you and RC and nobody, how did you grow the team to 52 million?
Mm.
I would say my best strategy, if I had to pick one, was video. I attracted most of the awesome talent that works on our team because they saw the show. They kind of got to know me. They figured out, oh, he's not an idiot. It seems like he knows something. It's personable. And that would be my one strategy. If I had to do it all over again, I'm going to leverage social to get the word out. And so we have another show, if you look it up on the RSource.tv, called Respecting the Psychology of Social Media. And that kind of talks about how to leverage Facebook and Instagram. And you have content on this as well. I actually just saw your post on Housing Wire, but how to leverage Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, because those are all different streams and you should have all different strategies. And that's kind of back to the point of respecting the psychology of social media. When you're on Instagram, you're in a different frame of mind than when you're on LinkedIn. And so your strategies should tweak there. Back to your original question, people ask me all the time, which one should I use? All of them. You should use all of them. And we struggle with it today. Like, we're constantly tweaking and refining our strategies. And so now we're again, kind of a Gary Vee trick. We're repurposing our bigger content into smaller bite-sized chunks. And we're respecting the psychology of social media in Instagram. And so that's why you see a lot of our stuff not working harder, just working smarter. It's the same content chunked up for Instagram. And then you have like podcast forums where we can do stuff like this, where it's longer. You can get into the weeds. You can get into the X's and O's. So that's important. Right. And then you got Twitter. So do you have to use it? No. If you're not, I think you're missing out on a gigantic opportunity nowadays. I used to speak 10 years ago and go, really? You guys are spending 10 grand on a billboard to reach 10,000 people and maybe only 5 of them were your target market. I could spend 10 grand on social and reach only my target market. Nobody, I will not reach somebody that I don't want to reach because I can define my market. And we still do that today. So if I go and put out a show, I can hope and pray that somebody's going to watch it, or I can spend $5, $20 in each one of those social streams and go, I would like realtors to watch this, lenders, title, escrow, appraisers. You can do that today. And it's crazy that we're having to talk about this because this seems like social media 101, but most people don't know that. If you want to target Boeing employees, that's big here in Seattle, that are age 35 and older in Seattle. You can do that, right? Like originators. Why would you not put that message out? If you're a top producer, you're probably pretty confident, right? That you're probably the best lender in that town, which you can make a good case because your volume shows that. So why wouldn't we want to tell more people that, right? Why wouldn't we want to tell the masses and get that amazing message out to attract even more business?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a question that I'm with you on that. I don't think there is any one answer. It's like I say about marketing. Hey, what works? Well, everything works at various levels. It depends on the person, location, et cetera, the application of it.
I think we just try a thing like once or twice, and we don't see immediate results, whether it's social or video or blogging, and we just give up too much. I mean, that's not an industry issue. That's an American thing. If you go back to our videos 10 years ago, they were horrible, but we stuck with it.
Right.
And that's the same with any strategy. To your point, I would just encourage people to stick with it, refine it, tweak it. That's the important part is, each week we learn something new every day on our show of what to do better for next week. And that's the mindset you have to have on any strategy. Like, all right, how do we tweak this to be better, more efficient, reach more people, more views, more likes? And we just have that mindset. We have that mindset for the team too. So every month we'll have a team meeting. We'll look back and celebrate our successes and go, all right, what are the things that we could have done better?
Yeah.
And when you start that process, it gets uncomfortable because you're kind of looking in the mirror, chipping away your flaws. Yes. But eventually you get ultra comfortable in a setting where you're okay talking about what you can do better. And sometimes it's what I can do better. And God, I mean, the companies that can do that from the top down are going to really set themselves apart. Having those fierce conversations, which is a great book behind me, having those fierce conversations about, hey, what's working, what's not working. That should be a regular strategy from CEO down, or if you're running an LL running a team down, that should just be something that happens every week, if not every month. Yeah.
All right, let's pivot a little bit because I know you have a lot of info on this topic as well, and this is kind of a segue, if you will, from the social video discussion, what I'll use the phrase modern mortgage marketer, if you will. And it's funny because lately I've been doing some work and writing some stuff. And this morning, I think I was dealing with this topic about winning the customer early. Right. And I think I'd be curious to get your input on why, because let me just set this up, because we got two things happening. We got the person that you interviewed who does 75 mil and she doesn't touch social media. Well, the advantage she has, she's got a massive database of past clients. Yeah. Not everybody's there. True. So if you're there, cool. That can feed you forever if you're leveraging it right. Let's just assume she clearly is. However, not everybody's there. Right? Some people don't have that huge database. They're just starting. They got 100, 200, whatever. But more importantly, it's like you want to get chosen moving forward too with new clients. And so what that brings me to is winning the customer early. Mm-hmm. We know where are the customers today. They're online. And then let's add on top of that, we have a lot of people competing now, getting into this space, iBuyers, Zillow's now a mortgage company, et cetera. And so there's more noise. There's more attempts at attention for our consumers. So my kind of dialogue with LOs is, how are you going to get chosen if you aren't online where the attention is?
Yeah. I mean, dude, you just summed it up in the best way. Like the end of story. Why do you want to be on social? Why do you want to be online? Because that is where the battle for the consumer is right now. Mm-hmm. And if you have no presence, you got no shot. Mm-hmm. All right. End of story. Like debate's over, close the book. We're good to go. You're right, dude. That's it. Like, we shot a show on that too. Like being first to the customer is the pursuit for everybody. That's why Fox News just kind of got into the game, because they know that they're the tip of the spear. I can't remember that show, Aaron, if you can find it, but it talks about how Fox News just got into real estate and they know that they have thousands, if not millions of viewers.
Yeah.
Well, if they can get to the consumer and they have, say, a real estate brand or a mortgage brand, right? They can reach the consumer first. And so that's where the biggest battle right now is happening, is trying to reach the consumer first. In the show, I kind of pointed out, I get it, and I know that's what's happening, but I also tried to help the consumer understand how absurd that is. And I use the analogy like, hey, you're a consumer, and you don't know which realtor to work with. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to go into Safeco Field, our where the Hawks play. Yeah. And it's full of realtors. There's 70,000 realtors there. And if I leverage the first person I talk to, do you realize how absurd that is? There's 69,999 other realtors there. Maybe I should do some research and find the first one or find the best one, not the first one. Mm-hmm. But that's what consumers are doing when they just give up and be like, oh, so-and-so, iBuyer, company reached out to me first, or Zillow Mortgage did. Mm-hmm. Okay. Like that's not the end of your homework, I hope. Like there's a lot of other companies and realtors and lenders out there. Maybe we should do a little homework. So I get it, and it's 100% right. The battle for the consumer is happening right now because companies know if they can be first, there's a really good chance that they're going to get that business. Mm-hmm. I just want to educate the consumer that that's not always the best person to work with just because they happen to reach you first. Does that make sense?
Yeah, unless you're at Ricky Bobby's brokerage, and if you ain't first, you're last. So,
right.
But no, I think that is part of the battle. So you're up in the heart of like iBuyer territory, man. They got them all: Redfin, Zillow, friggin' Amazon. Yep. So talk about what's the feeling? What are the emotions you're seeing come from? Like realtors are really kind of the big focus of this. Lenders a little bit less, but. What are you hearing and feeling up there?
Oh man, it's crazy. So Seattle has some big headwinds for realtors and lenders. So we have a ton of iBuyers. We have a ton of fintech, and we're the first NMLS for realtors to change the commission structure, which I do believe is coming to the rest of the nation.
Yeah, I want to know more about that. Get specific when you're
ready. So right now, most listings across the nation. Nobody ever really has a conversation about how the buyer's agent's paid because it's already built into the price, right? There's 6% when you list your house. There's typically 3% for the listing agent, 3% for the buyer's agent. Well, NAR got sued for that. And so out of that, the NMLS, Northwest MLS said, okay, what we're going to do is say that there's no longer, you're no longer forced, and you never really forced, you never were forced, but they said you're no longer forced to build in a buyer's commission. So what happens now is people, mostly the Redfins of the world, have the opportunity to list a house without any buyer's commission. It's just the seller. So now realtors have to fight for their commission and either have the buyer paid out of their pocket, which is going to be an interesting conversation, or maybe add it as a closing cost, maybe up the purchase price to cover their commission. And so it's a crazy, interesting time in Seattle to be in the business because this is happening as we speak. And I've done a lot of research on this, obviously. And then I've been to town hall meetings. I've spoke with other, the Keller Williams of the world, the John Scotts, Windermere EXP, and they're all kind of scrambling to try to figure out, like, how are we going to adapt to this change? Some have good ideas, some don't. And we don't know how that's going to play out. We're the first in the nation to go down this route. I think realtors in a self-preserving hope and pray say, oh, business as usual. And I want them. I have their back. I want it to be business as usual. I just don't think it's going to be. A lot of people, if you're a conspiracy theorist, think that Redfin is behind the original lawsuit because it obviously pushes their model forefront. I don't know if that's true or not. It does make sense if they were. But so long story short, buyers agents are now kind of having to fight for their commission. And also they're not forced. So if I'm a buyer's agent and Aaron, who's over here, is going to buy a house and he wants to go look at 123 A Street, if there's no commission built into that listing, it'll show up, first of all, on the listing remarks when you're like on Redfin, it'll say, hey, 0 commission for buyer's agent, which is crazy. But as a realtor, I'm not forced to show them that house.
Really?
Which is weird because it's like, well, that's my client, so I want him to get the house that he wants. So thanks for not forcing me to show the house, but I kind of have to because he's still my client and he wants to look at the house. So there's a lot at play, and we're very early to this. And for the other neighboring states, you really need to pay attention because I do think this is coming your way. Northwest MLS is an early adopter typically. So it's not surprising that they would be first to make these changes, but I do think this is coming to the rest of the nation.
I'm looking at my email because I'm trying to find the article that was sent to me about that lawsuit. If I recall correctly, was dismissed recently, the NAR lawsuit?
I think NAR wants it to be dismissed.
Yeah.
We have a show with Brian Stevens that's a podcast style interview where we actually, in the comment sections, we have the actual lawsuit itself.
Yeah.
So, I can get you the legal verbiage if you'd like to see the changes that were made.
No, I just wish I could find it because somebody had sent that off to me recently. Anyways, do your research. But yeah, it's very interesting to see how this whole thing evolves. Crazy to think that now you're going to be throwing that into the mix with the seller not having to pay the buyer's commission. Was that what you said? The buyer's agent commission. Yeah,
basically they still can list the house with 6%. That's still an opportunity.
Sure.
The Redfins of the world are certainly not going to want to do that because their narrative is going to be, hey, it's cheaper to sell with us. We're only going to build in 3%, maybe even less, and let the buyer's agents figure it out on their own. So I think traditional realtors will band together, hopefully, and keep it at business as usual. But again, the new iBuyer type platforms and the Redfins of the world will certainly leverage that to try to push out traditional realtors.
What's your take on, the word that comes to mind is like survivability of the iBuyers? And I'm thinking about the context in that you had this awesome interview, which for those listening right now, you need to at some point go to theresource.tv and watch the interview that you guys did with Kenny Klaus.
Kenny Klaus, yeah.
Yeah, because I think that's, as I talk to realtors all the time and all that kind of jazz, I think that's the approach realtors should take. But what's your opinion on, the market share grab, the consumer's willingness to go that route versus traditional?
I've been trying to scream from the rooftop for traditional realtors to put out more content. My take on it is we just need to be educated. First, as realtors, as lenders, we need to know what truly that iBuyer platform looks like. So when a consumer comes to us, we can educate them versus just saying, oh, that's dumb. Why is it? Well, I've done research. They typically net 11% less. Okay, well, that's some valuable information. So first out of the gate, do you want to net 11% less with iBuyer platforms versus traditional? Most people don't like netting 11% less.
Yeah.
They say they're cheaper historically. There's 7.5% fees where traditional realtors are 6%. Good piece of information, but we don't know that if we don't do our homework. And I don't think enough of us are doing our homework to understand the new competition coming in. So that's step one. Step two is doing what you and I do. Create content, educate consumers as to, hey, there's this new thing. This is why Kenny Klaus is so brilliant. I've already done all the research. So if you want to know about the new thing, you come to me first. And by the way, they're a buyer just like anybody else. And this is why I think it's so brilliant. So I'll list your house and I'll get their offer. I'll get 10 iBuyer company offers and I'll present it to you, but I'll also get traditional offers that typically will net more and I'll present that to you. So now he's controlled the narrative, right? He hasn't lost business to an iBuyer platform because he's basically just treating him like a traditional buyer. Yeah, sure, Zillow, give me your best offer. Sure, Open Door, give me your best offer. Sure, OfferPad, give me your best offer. And so which is smart because you kind of pit them against each other. But then you also have your traditional, person in the community saying, hey, I'll give you X amount.
Right.
And so some people that, may get transferred across the nation and have to move in 10 days and don't really care about what they net, well, they might go with the iBuyer platform.
Yeah.
But most people, and I've been doing this a long time, want to try to maximize their asset, their house, and the net profits coming out of that. And they typically aren't ready to move in 2 days and need 30 days to get their affairs in order. So I would think most people would stick with the traditional model. The beauty of it is we're not shunning the new. We're leveraging it. It's still an option, and we're giving that option to consumers. And that's why I think Kenny's approach in response to this is so smart versus just going, oh, they're dumb. You're not going to make any money with them.
Yeah. And I've seen some agents respond that way, and that's a mistake. So that's a good lesson. And by the way, you as a loan officer listening as well, you can help your agent understand that that's the right approach. If you want, gather some data for them, gather a net sheet, right, side by side, and show them what the net's going to be. Because I've done that, and agents they love that. They eat that up.
Actually, the title and escrow companies, if you Google that, because that's brilliant strategy, a lot of them have done that homework for you. So you can kind of Google that and you'll see a spreadsheet and it'll say like OfferPad, Open Door, Zillow, Redfin, blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of cool because they've already done the commissions and the fees and what an average person in that market would net versus traditional real estate. So that resource already exists. Again, if you want to work smarter, not harder, Google that and see if it exists for your hometown. And again, if not, talk to your title and escrow person because they're kind of all over this thing.
Yeah, I think the last note on that is don't have your head in the sand in thinking that they aren't going to come to a neighborhood near you soon.
Yeah.
They are for sure. Because like you said, I mean, heck, 5, maybe 10% of the market, what was the number? Like it's a $94 billion market or something like that for annual transactions.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good chunk of change if you're getting 5 to 10% of that,
Yep. And again, educate yourself and then put out your own content. Like, I don't want somebody else controlling the narrative, whether fintech companies are better than, say, Movement Mortgage. I'm going to control that narrative. And the only way I can control that narrative is being educated and putting my own content out. And that's the same for realtors in your town. If you don't put anything out and iBuyer companies are putting out content, you're not in the game. You're not even in the fight. They win because there's no counterpoint to the iBuyer conversation. That's why it's so important that we have to put out our content, our narrative, because if they're the only ones putting their stuff out, that's the only one a consumer is going to believe.
Yeah. And once again, it comes back to what we talked about earlier is the attention's online and you want to get chosen. Why not put out a video, an article, a blog post, an infographic, hey, welcome to town, Zillow iBuyers, right? Right. We're glad you're here. Homeowners, let's talk about the differences, right? And then totally let them choose whatever the best option is for them.
Yeah. I mean, you're scripting it right now. Like that's a perfect script for how that video would go.
That's what I do, man. I script on the fly.
Yeah. It's perfect.
All right. Sweet, man. I know you're busy. You got a lot of stuff going on. Closing this out. Anything you're doing as you enter in the end of this Q4, how are you prepping for 2020?
I'll prep it with a question. I don't know that I have the answer yet. Maybe you will. So what am I doing? I'm telling our team, hey, if you did 30 million last year, 40 or 50, whatever your number is, and people listening or watching, get that number in your head. I think doing that same number next year is going to be twice as hard.
Why?
And more importantly, what are we going to do about it? Why? I think obviously rates at some point will go back up. Mm-hmm. We have new competitors in fintech and iBuyer. Mm-hmm. And I'm concerned, especially for my town, I'm concerned that agent count may go down. So our referral partners and the opportunities to get referrals may go down with the new competition and with the commission changes. So for Seattle, we kind of have a three-headed monster that's facing us. Doesn't mean we're dead. Doesn't mean that our business is going to go backwards. It means that, again, we need to pivot. We need to be ahead of this. We need to play chess, not checkers, and be 2-3 moves ahead of this and go, okay, I want to do 50, 25, 30 million next year. I know it's going to be tougher. I'm going to have fewer referral partners. So what am I going to do in this last quarter of 2019 to prep for this? Because come 2020, it's going to be too late and you're going to see a big reduction in volume. We all know. I mean, I told you earlier, I think we started out with $256 billion worth of volume unaccounted for. That's all going away. Those are all, we'll take the gift this year. Thank you so much for the low hanging fruit and the refis. Right. That's going away. I know 40% of my business will go away next year because we've already refinanced them. So right out of the gate, as to why I'm saying that, I know out of the gate 40% of my business that I did this year won't be there next year. So the important question that I'm leaving you with, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to change for next year?
That's a good way to close out, man. Absolutely. Thank you very much. All right. So real quick, once again, for people who want to reach out with you and connect with you, we know the website, right? The resource.tv. We're going to put links there. Any other place you want to send them, like your Facebook page or?
Yeah, follow us on Facebook. That's where most of our community lives, but the resource.tv or the resource.tv is a great way. We have a lot of speaking engagements coming up, so it'll list all of those. The next one is in Seattle, and then we have tons of them next year all over the nation. I don't even know. I'd have to look at my calendar. So
awesome.
If we're in your if we're in your neck of the woods, we'd love for you to come out and meet us.
Fantastic, man. Listen, Ryan, can't say I appreciate you enough. You are a leader. You're leading from the front in our industry. So, man, thanks for doing all the great stuff you do. It was a pleasure to have you back for a second time on the show, man.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. All right, listeners, as always, you know what you need to do. If you like this episode or any of them, hey, leave us a little love, a little review out on the interwebs, and we will see you on the next one. Bye for now.